Welcome to my tutorial for Bullet. This is a Sega arcade game that I never heard of before. I just found it on MAME when I was surfing the ROMs. It's basically a twin-stick shooter. It's actually mapped to both analog sticks by default on MAME, at least on this version of MAME. So I was able to use my FlyDigi Apex 4 controller, which has, Hall effect sticks, which are really fucking precise for twin-stick shooters. I use that controller to beat Kill Knight on Sufferance mode, which I have a tutorial up for. That was an extreme twin-stick shooter. But this one is difficult because even though it's a short game, it's only about 15 minutes long, there are no continues and it's one-hit deaths. So you only got so many lives to get through the 5 or 6 stages. And it can get pretty dense and aggressive. The first stage is easy, but overall the game is pretty intense all throughout. So it's a pretty intense game. You'll definitely want to trim your nose hairs and change out to a fresh diaper, you know what I mean? Because you don't want any distractions while playing this, you don't want, if your nose itches or something like that, it's like game fucking over, you know what I mean? But basically, first boss is super easy. The way you get power-ups in this game is you walk over there's like these little things on the ground, these little stations that you can stand on, and the longer you stand on them, the more powered up you get. So basically, sometimes you want to run over them if you don't have time because the enemies are pressing you, or you'll just stand there for as long as you can. But you only need to stand there until you charge that bar in the bottom left. That's your power bar. The higher that bar goes, the more powered up your weapon is, all the way up to a laser, basically, is the full power up. So you use those little stations to maintain your power up level as well as to get fully powered up, depending on how long you stand on them. But they do have a limit. When you stand on them for too long, they turn a certain color, and then you can't use them anymore. So that's how you know that it's exhausted. But you'll get used to it, and you'll be able to kind of just walk over them sometimes just to get a little bit of power back, or you can stand there. But you have to kind of depend how safe it is to do so. So for this boss, this is one of the harder bosses. For this boss, you want to wait for the first 2 laser barriers to show up on screen and then disappear, and then you want to make your press towards the actual boss and start firing on it. And then basically, as far as the gates go, you have until the gate gets all the way at the bottom there, as you just saw it, and then once it's done at the bottom, it cycles back to the top again. So after you pass the second gate, which I like to do, after the second gate goes down, I'm talking about from the top down. After the second gate disappears, that's when I rush in and start firing on the boss, and then I have as much time until that last gate cycles back up to the top. Then I start moving back down again and repeat the process. So what I did was I made 2 edits to this playthrough. This playthrough is unedited. This is actually my successful run, aside from 2 sections that I edited in from my better attempts at certain parts. So I show my best attempt at the second boss, which you just saw there. That was edited in. That wasn't from the actual run. And then for the semi-final boss, I edited that in because that was another no-death practice that I did on that. So I just wanted to show some clean executions of the boss. But, it is easy to fuck up. You saw I died on a rat, which was really fucking bad, which I shouldn't have died on that, but I didn't have any fucking caffeine before this attempt. I was surprised I even beat the game. Usually I take some stims for these kind of games, but a little drowsy, but, I got through it. I had enough practice with it, I guess, to get through. It took me around 5 hours, 2 minutes to beat this game. I almost beat it in about 2 hours. I got to the final boss, and the final boss is really not hard, but I fucked it up. So then it took me another 3 hours of failed attempts and practice to actually beat the game. I set the lives up to 5 in the dip switch. The default is 3, so you can do that. When you do that on MAME, just make sure you reset the system so that it takes effect. So basically, this game has no buttons. It's just 2 twin sticks. So you can't get a better fire rate by using turbo or anything like that. It's just the fire rate is fixed since it's tied into a stick. So you point the right stick in the direction you want to fire, and the left stick moves your character, and that's it. Similar to Robotron. You want to constantly... The crowd control in this game is huge, so you want to constantly be clearing enemies out. I think playing through something like Gunsmoke helped me a lot with this particular type of game because you really have to clear shit out. Of course, it's nowhere near as intense as Gunsmoke, and I got a tutorial for that one as well. That took like 25 hours to beat, and that's a short game too. But for this, wait for these things to move, these big things, and then you get to this safe spot here right about mid-range and keep firing, and you'll take out the enemy as it rushes you from the throne, and you'll kill it. And that works even with the weakest weapon, so even if you're not powered up, you can do that. But you want to wait like about a second or two for those things to move so you can run through the gap. Just when you get up to where the boss is in that safe spot, it's not really a safe spot, so make sure you look carefully first before running over there, blindly, because there'll be turrets over there. Sometimes there's enemies and shit over there, so just make sure you have that area clear before you stand in that safe spot, because once that shit clears out, then it's a safe spot. So you do earn 1-ups by points in this game. So setting it to 5 lives probably doesn't help that much, because when I set it to 5 lives, I think there was times when I didn't get credit for my 1-ups because I was holding the max amount of lives. I believe it maxes out at 5. So there's possibly times when I didn't get credit for a 1-up when I should have got one because it was filled up. At least that's what seems to be the case. I think it lets you hold maybe 5 lives total, and that's it. But I think they may be every 25 to 50,000 points, but I never figured out exactly when they appeared. But the route in this stage is kind of important, because if you wander around too much, you'll go the wrong way and it'll take longer. So follow this route you see me taking, where I go between these red tiles. I assume the red tiles kill you, but I never tested it out. I just always avoided them, because they're the only ones that are red. So I just figured they would kill me. But you can test that out. The turrets are invincible. You can never defeat the turrets that pop up. So just stay a little distance from them so you have time to dodge the bullets. Aside from that, like, a sweeping motion is actually really good to clear out your path. Back and forth as you're moving in a direction like that will clear out a lot of enemies. That's a good technique. You can also do a spin by spinning the right stick around. That works in a few limited scenarios to clear out enemies. If they're all around you, it'll work. But the fire rate is slow on that, so it's not something you want to abuse the whole time. This boss is a little bit challenging. You just want to focus on, clearing your way to the center and shooting at the boss. Now, whenever you take out one of the clones that comes off the throne, it will clear out all the enemies. I believe that's how it's triggered. It seems to clear out the enemies when you take down one of the clones. I think that's how it always works whenever there's enemies with the boss. I think that's how the game works. I figured that out really late, though. It's not too important. So this is already pretty far into the game. It's not a long game, so this is probably already like halfway. So you want to get those power-ups pretty much as soon as you can, especially when you start a stage, because your power-up level goes away when you start a new stage. You lose all your power-up level, so you want to get it back. You want to at least have some power-ups starting a stage so you can clear shit out easier. It definitely helps. So even though all the bosses kind of look the same for the most part, there's different strategies for each of them pretty much. So it's a little different each time. So as you saw, I did cover the second boss. I showed that with no deaths from one of my successful runs of that boss. In my actual run, I think I died once on this run. It was kind of sloppy. I don't usually die on that, but it's easy to die. There's a few different enemy types that have different attacks, as you can see, so you'll get used to that. But, this is definitely a twitchy game where you have to have really good, reflex and dodging to move through. But, practice will definitely help getting used to the routes and, of course, knowing what to do on the bosses. The more you have the bosses down, because the bosses are the hardest part. Though there is one room that's fucking insane at the end of the game. The final boss room is extremely fucking dense. And it's very easy. It's good to get there. It's very easy to lose lives, so it's good to get there with a few lives in reserve so you can get through. Now, on this run, I actually did well and didn't die in the beginning of that room, so that was good. But normally, I would at least die once. It's like a 50-50 chance that I get through that opening into that door without dying. So here's another edit. This is my best run with this boss, which was a no-death in practice. I believe it was from a practice session with save states. So, and that's what I recommend do. You use save states to practice the bosses and shit like that. And then, put the game together. Do a practice run first, and then start making attempts at the full game. Because there is no continues in this game. It's a 1cc requirement. But you can set the lives to 5. Now, this boss is extremely hard. I mean, overall, it's pretty fucking hard. It's not a consistent pattern, but there is a basic idea of the way I'm moving. You see how I'm moving in a circle, and I don't stand next to the boss's throne for more than like a second or two? because that's how you die. Because the projectiles appear like right on you if you stand next to that throne. They're coming out of those pillars that are moving, but there's also bullets and shit that come out. So it's actually really fucking hard to not get hit and killed. So the idea with that is I move in a circular motion, and there's kind of a rhythm to it where there's like a gap where I can move back to the throne, fire again, and then after a second or two I wrap back around and retreat, and I circle around that clump of projectiles again into the gap, shoot at the boss, and just rinse and repeat. But it goes on for a while, especially if you only have your base gun. If you lose your power up or if you die, you'll have a weaker gun, and you could be fighting that for a while. So it probably goes on for over a minute or something like that. It feels like a long time, but it can be pretty intense because it can, it's not like the most complicated thing, but it's very easy. Like if your focus is a little bit off, it's very easy to stand there too long or walk into a bullet. So it does take some focus and some practice to get used to that. So this is the final stage already. So the boss actually is really easy. The combat here is not really that hard because you're only moving to the right. So focus on clearing out the right path with a sweeping motion mainly, just to clear out the guys on the right. And just keep running to the right. You can outrun the bullets and lasers to an extent, but overall they're faster than your character walks. So eventually you need to divert your path a little, up or down to dodge the bullets. You can't just walk away from them and then they'll fade out. I mean, sometimes they will, but it's better to move up or down just so that they pass you. So now we have the boss, which this boss is very easy, but this is right before the final boss. But this is an easy boss. All you got to do with this is just dodge the pillars and just focus on shooting at the boss. And when you kill the clones, you'll wipe out all the minions, so you don't have to worry about the minions too much. Don't try to fire on the minions; it's a waste. So just take out the throne, and you want to plan ahead a little bit, obviously, and try to picture where the pillars are going to move to. But just try to concentrate fire on the boss, and it's pretty fucking easy. It's like the easiest boss in the game, probably. Aside from maybe the first boss. So now this part is really hard to not die on. So what I do is I just get in here and try to move really fast. You see how dense that shit was, though. It's super easy to die on that part. And I rely on some luck because it's probably like a 50-50 for me that I get through there without dying. So then I go to the right side of the screen and I use the spin move and I start moving up. But of course I fucked it up near the end here. But it does get very hard when you get all the way to the top of the screen, even with the spinning, because the enemies really start to collect up at the top and fire on you like crazy. And then you got boss orbs appearing and other bullshit. So, expect to probably lose a life in this area. So you want to get here with a few lives, at least one extra life in reserve, is what I would recommend. Now, this boss is actually easy from an execution perspective. It's just very easy to fuck it up, because it gets intense at the end here. You don't want to fuck up. And you do very little damage when you have your pea shooter. Unless you didn't die, you're going to be bringing a really weak weapon. Now, if you did well, if you got all the way to the boss without dying, then you'll have whatever weapon you had at the power level it was at. And, you can kill these things faster. Especially if you stand all the way at the bottom of the screen and fire straight up. You can actually concentrate fire on each single orb and take them out. But I just play it the safe way. Because I usually just have the pea shooter when I get here, which is the weakest fucking weapon. So I just do it the long way, and I just stay all the way on the right side and just move up and down. And I'm sure you could do the same thing on the left side. I just chose the right side. And I just fire straight ahead to the left and just move up and down, basically. I will, circle out sometimes, depending on what's going on like that. I had to dodge that bullet. So you don't want to just move up and down, but that's the basic idea. I keep it pretty simple, and it's not hard. It just takes a while. And, it's easy to fuck up. Because the bullets kind of appear right on you. They appear from those orbs that are cycling, but sometimes it feels like they just spawn like right next to you. So you really got to be, focused on continuously moving while you're doing this. But really, it's not that hard. You know what I mean? I wouldn't say it's not nearly as hard as that semi-final boss where you got to circle around those all those projectiles. But I recommend practicing these sections with save state. To practice this final room and the final boss. And, any areas where you're dying, use save states to practice those areas. I probably would have beat the game after 2 hours, but I fucked up on this boss. I got hit by a fucking bullet. So, That cost me probably an extra 3 hours of practice and failed attempts. But yeah, it's definitely an intense game, but it's quite a good game. It's a solid twin stick shooter that I didn't know about. But yeah, as long as you're patient, it'll go down. It does get faster as you kill more of them. I think they go a little faster and shoot more frequently, but at the same time, when there's less orbs, there's less bullets that come out because there's not as many orbs to fire at you. So it might be a little faster, but it actually gets easier as you clear the orbs out. Yeah, and that's it. So after this, the game actually loops. And the second loop seems, quite fucking hard. It seems way more aggressive. But I was just playing just to beat the game, so for me this was good. But yeah, it's a pretty challenging game. Definitely not an easy game. And the time it takes is going to depend on, on your skill level with crowd control in these kind of games, because it is definitely probably a higher skill game. It's not like an easy game to just beat with practice if you're not familiar with these types of games. Let me know if you have any questions, and thanks for watching.